against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
And welcome to Anonymous Bites Back. We're here, depending on what day it is, 5/13/21 or 14/5/21, depending on where you are. God, a lot has happened this week. God.
The whole world just go to war, Tyler.
Yeah. I really didn't want to talk about the whole Israel-Gaza thing. It's a little too personal because I have, people I know on both sides. But I will comment that, that Lebanon has entered the fight last night. I'm not sure if anybody was aware of that. Were you?
No. I saw the comments by the Palestinian leader, though, but no.
Yeah.
So what did the Lebanese say about this? I mean, I know Erdogan commented to Turkey.
Yeah. And these attacks happen on Eid, which is like one of the most holy days in the Muslim faith.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. To be honest, like I know that they were saying that this war was like 2014, to be honest. Like I haven't seen this kind of bad fighting since the 90s when the PLO was still there,
Yeah, I know exactly. But it's like unexpected. Like suddenly everything happens at once. Like you're just busy doing all kinds of other stuff, and then suddenly this happens.
Yeah. It started over. It started in Jerusalem over the reappropriation of like houses, and it escalated quickly. Honestly, this was not kind of surprising to me. I was just surprised that it happened in Ramadan.
Yeah.
I heard it's like they're theorizing that it's like what's his name, Netanyahu is trying to keep power because otherwise then they're going to prosecute him. Who knows?
Well, I mean, that would be that's been going on for about 2 or 3 years now. They always say in Israel that he has a rabbit in his hat, and he does these mysterious things, but this time I don't think any side had really kind of thought that this would happen. It was kind of like having like a gallon of gasoline and somebody just throwing a match into it. That's kind of what the situation was going at. It was the fuel was already there. So
when is their next election?
God, I'd have to ask some friends, but I believe it's sometime later this year. Not now.
Yeah, let me Google it. Israel.
Did you push the episode on the ABB account, Tyler? Or?
I couldn't. You'd have to do it on your end. I can't get the authorize button to work.
Okay.
So,
How about you mean like manually, like a tweet or something?
no, I logged out of the account. Yeah.
Always scared now to log into Twitter. Yeah, it traumatized me, like seriously. Site sucks so much. I lost like so many accounts already.
Yes, it's starting to turn into another Facebook. To be honest, with its literally people are losing accounts for like nothing.
thing is, I don't really care about us, but I care about like normal people do not have like the methods to circumvent the censorship. Like I will throw up 3 new accounts for every account they ban. It doesn't matter. But these like normal people, yeah, you lose your voice, you lose everything. Sometimes you work on it for years and years. And my big account, like I mean, like I worked on it since 2017. That's 65,000 tweets. I mean, a lot of work in that. Yeah.
It's amazing. He's been prime minister for 12 years, and I always hear people in America say, "Oh, Putin's a dictator because he had 3 terms or something like that." But this guy, he can do it no problem.
Well, there will come a time and place, when Netanyahu will be out of there. It's particularly his wife has always been the weakest link. She's not in real life. She's not a real good person. There's been multiple incidences where she has acted very poorly to people that surround her. That's like the best way I can put it.
Hey,
what does she
Lubers,
do?
you need to mute or something. You got bad echo.
Me?
Lubers.
Are you sure it's coming from me? Okay, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry to interrupt there. That was just killing me.
Yeah.
But so you're right though, Tyler. In fact, in the 2020 presidential primary, the shift in support from the Democratic leadership went from Netanyahu to Benny Gantz, to the point to where like Beto O'Rourke was talking friendly about him, Bernie talked friendly about him, Camilleri did. Beto O'Rourke went as far as calling Netanyahu an asshole or something like that. And it caused like a 5-second stir. And then Bernie Sanders echoed it, that Bibi was a scumbag or something like that. And as a way to, I don't know, like to just continue the unabated, unconditional support for the state of Israel on behalf of the U.S. government, like it would make sense to kind of find another, well, in the case of Benny Gantz, the actual war criminal, the ICC was trying to investigate him, and much like Mike Pompeo and Donald Trump, Bibi does not recognize the ICC, nor does he believe that they have jurisdiction. So that didn't go anywhere, huh?
Like, to be honest, like, I'm not sure if you ever heard of the Swedish Accord that they tried to do in the 90s, where they try to get both leaders to come to a third country and talk peace. I think it's about time they open up those things, because honestly, these are two people that need to coexist together. Like, wars, more wars are not going to solve anything. Peace always starts with
No, but if you can't look at Miko Peled wrote about it, but you can't, and he was his father was an IDF general in the 60s. That Peled, he said to argue for like any kind of a two-state solution based on what the map looks like right now in terms of occupied Palestinian territories is pointless. But I mean, we've got, what one side of this that really legitimately has all of the cards, and so to like broker some sort of I mean, there's the coexist. You've got an occupying force with nuclear weapons and billions of dollars in aid from the couple major superpowers. It just I understand that that's complicated, but it's also reduced to like,
Well,
the
there are other countries that
broken and
coexist with a
lifeless body.
two-party. There are other countries that exist with two-party states. In Africa, there's quite a bit of them. It can be done.
Yeah, but you had South Africa, which for a long time just continued what the hell they were doing despite all the outcry.
Oh yeah, I kind of forgot about that.
Yeah, that whole like however many decades of apartheid. Yeah. Yeah.
And jailing opposition parties. Mandela.
Right. Had a whole
Sorry, I
concert over it.
totally shoved that part out of my head when I said that.
Tonight
Yeah, this is great. They were friends. No.
on Anonymous Bites Back, Tyler forgets apartheid.
You
Yeah.
made a good
Titling the
point,
episode.
Tyler. You're talking
What?
about the Swedish solution, right?
Yes,
And that
yes.
is,
With the PLO,
based
I believe that they were when the peace talks were going on. That was with the PLO before the Hamas was in control, I believe.
yeah, well, but the final statement was made in 2018, but it is based on the UN resolution 2334, and that pretty much condemned the occupation of Palestinian territories in that sense, and it asked for a two-state solution. And many countries, including China, etc., they were very much behind that solution, and the Palestinian president was also in favor of it. But of course, there was a veto against it, right? The Israelis withdrew all their money from the organization after that and stuff. So this is there was a really close call there, because we almost had a two-state solution there. And that's what the Swedish solution was based on too later on. But see, that's 2 years later, right? The UN Security Council resolution was adopted on 23 December 2016, and I have that Swedish statement was done in 20 September 2018 in New York. Yeah, so right now it's going to go into a huge conflict, I think.
Yeah.
Because you have literally
You know,
Turkey is the strongest force in the region, and Turkey condemned the actions by Israel and America.
Fucking Fox had somebody on there last night advocating on behalf of the Palestinians. CNN did. There was a nuanced conversation for 30 seconds on CNN.
That's unique, right? I mean,
That's how bad it is.
have any of you guys
How
read the
blatantly obvious it is.
Have any of you guys read the Whitney Webb article on the history of the Christians? And yeah, that's insane. They actually think that by doing
The
this,
Third
this whole
Temple movement stuff.
Yeah, I mean it makes
We've
sense.
been
why-
talking about that for a little bit now, since this has been going on, and I mean what's crazy, or not what's crazy, but what's significant and what has allowed for this to happen is that the Third Temple movement now has open advocates in the Knesset as members of the Likud party. And not as a fringe political party or anything like that, but fucking the majority party. And this is the rapture can't take place until the Third Temple of Solomon's built. That is historically on the location of Al-Aqsa Mosque and Dome of the Rock. And so for the last several years, but more couple decades, this Third Temple movement has been gaining more and more mainstream support, And while the I guess more hardcore activists within it have been literally tunneling under Al Aqsa to quite literally destabilize it at the foundation. When they attacked the other day, as you know, it was the last several hours of Ramadan, you know, were coming to a close, or the last couple of days. That was a huge symbolic victory for the Third Temple movement. Like, this is in the hearts and minds of these people. This is how you get the rapture.
Okay,
Yeah.
I can see you, Eric.
Hey, sorry about that. Well, it's good to see you, or at least hear your voices. I'm just coming into this, so I'm a bit disoriented. I'll wait to hear some things and then try to respond.
I don't know if someone else wants to put on a camera. We'll see.
Oh, sure. I suppose I'm either stupid in making my face visible.
Oh, no, I don't have it set up like that, so don't have to worry about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm good with the camera.
No. I would have to go into the back end and hook this up completely different.
Anyway, thank you, Mark, for inviting me.
I'll give you somebody to look at though, Eric, so you're not just the only one.
Oh, yeah, no, it's just, during COVID, right? Yeah, it's just the alienation, right? I'd at least like to be visible. It's just, a decent remedy, deficient still to never seeing anyone. So, yeah.
I kind of didn't participate in that bit of it.
No,
for
actually,
the most part.
I was out and about quite a bit. Reckless, friends would say, but I don't know. In the last few weeks, I've been a little different, kind of odd, right? Because the vaccines are rolling out, sort of involuntary, but anyway, complicated. Oh, there you are.
Whole vaccine thing. Are you really going to discuss that, or I mean?
Oh, sure. Actually, I've seen some interesting posts from another guy associated with Anonymous in regard to the unconstitutionality about it. I honestly haven't thought too much about that facet of the vaccines. I suppose if it were a religion, I would be an agnostic.
Alamo, why aren't you speaking?
Here.
Oh yeah.
You mean the unconstitutionality of trying to mandate them?
Oh, sure. I believe that was what the pinned.
Yeah, because it's not even fully approved. It's still a trial, so you're an experimental subject. Even then, they're not giving informed consent. And then, like, if they mandate it for jobs, that's like saying, like, we have this new AIDS drug. You have to take it because you might get AIDS. They can't do that legally. They can't force you to take something that's,
Well, it's also, emergency authorization. That's the Patriot Act too. Initially, anything that like gets brought in under the auspice of emergency authorization gets little to no scrutiny.
The Ebola
no
cure
follow-
went the same way. Yeah.
And the thing is, additional qualified immunity to the manufacturers of these drugs was baked into legislation. I am not supportive of qualified immunity for any corporation or the fucking police for that matter. That troubles me as much as anything else, because that on its face tells me that you're actively doing shitty things because you had to have the qualified immunity baked into your mere existence, and I find that deeply unsettling.
There's one other industry that has that, the nuclear industry. And that's pretty shady. But the nuclear industry, you could say, yeah, well, we develop weapons in the reactors, so the government is the one that should take the indemnity. But when it comes to these vaccines, they're doing like a double take. They're like, oh, well, we aren't responsible for what Pfizer does, who's a known felon, and the other companies too, but yet you can't sue them.
Right.
And if you do go through vaccine court, I think it's about 5 to 10 years, and the maximum is $250,000. Imagine, like, you know, you're paralyzed or something. Who knows? Some people get a bad effect, some don't. But you can't live anymore, and now you're on public assistance. It's like the taxpayers are paying for the people suffering.
Well,
You
yeah.
know, in law school and studying con law and certain restrictions on people's constitutional rights, I've noticed there's an interesting balance between at least ostensible concern for public health and then whatever right people are at least claimed to be guaranteed in terms of their movement or expression or whatever, right? So this could be in terms of obscene content and the idea that people's exposure to it will harm them. Now, I'm not going either one way or the other. I am using the words like ostensible and seeming. But here, it's interesting, like, even if I feel actually right now guarded in saying these things, right? Because if someone hears me say these, this is such an easy way to be discredited. And so maybe I'm just, sheepish. But what I mean to say is there's an interesting balance, I think, in actual law between concern for public health or the seeming nature of that, and then people's right to do whatever. And then there's this interesting tension between how oppressive the cultural mechanism can be to the point that people will immediately be discredited if they go one way or the other, even in intellectual exploration, passively speaking, or with objective language. And then, there's this anxiety.
It's outside the allowable parameters of conversation.
Right.
MIT did on T-Lab. They were talking about MIT who infiltrated. I gotta find it. They infiltrated anti-vax group or whatever, anti-mask or whatever. And it's ridiculous what they said. They basically said that anti-mask people are actually more scientific. Like, they actually look at more data. They're actually more critical of their own data. But then they said at the end, the conclusion is like, but this is a dangerous thing. And the New York Times did that a few months ago with the critical thinking.
Yep. Well, and again, it's why Whitney was thrown off of Patreon. It's why Whitney was thrown off of Patreon. Not because they could point to a single factual inaccuracy in any of her work, but that her work might cause people to think.
Okay, I found it. Most fundamentally, the groups we studied believe that science is a process and not an institution. And then in the conclusion, they said, the skeptical impulse that the science simply isn't settled, prompting people to simply think for themselves to horrifying ends. How is that horrifying, and how is institutions? It sounds Orwellian.
Well, and I go back to, science rock star, and like, one of the people that is considered, at least in the mainstream, to be an authoritative source for all things science, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and his 5 rules for science, which are: question authority, no idea is true just because someone says so, including me, the me in this case being, celebrity astrophysicist Neil deGrasse Tyson. Rule 2, think for yourself. Question yourself. Don't believe anything just because you want to. Believing something doesn't make it so. Rule 3, test ideas by the evidence gained from observation and experiment. If a favorite idea fails a well-designed test, it's wrong. Get over it. Rule 4, follow the evidence wherever it leads. If you have no evidence, reserve judgment. And perhaps the most important rule of all, number 5, remember, you could be wrong. Even the best scientists have been wrong about some things. Newton, Einstein, and every other great scientist in history all made mistakes. Of course they did. They're human. Now, taken out of context, If you were to play a clip of Neil deGrasse Tyson saying that, or if you were to juxtapose it with, for example, the University of Pennsylvania study that just came out on, what they've learned about the mRNA vaccines since they've been in production, which is, we don't know, we haven't had enough time to study it. Yes, there were between 5 and 10% of the people that were giving it immediately had severe adverse effects. But that's all that's all they know, because it's an experiment in real time. So they haven't been able to effectively study these things because we're still in phase 3 of the trials. Nobody
was
gets
phase
told
two?
that. That's where the informed consent gets removed from it. But by the study and the data, this is phase 3 of the trial. It's
What
just
was phase 2?
they're saying that phase 2 was that was the rush, but that was from, I think, mid spring to like October of last year.
That's strange. So then phase 1 was like a truncated, like 3-month thing or something, 4 months.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's insane.
Well, phase
Oh,
1
what
was what
phase-
they do from what they had already been working on from 2015 on, when they were studying how to make and how to deal with SARS-CoV-2.
But they didn't include the information on the antibody dependent enhancement that was happening with the animals, huh?
Well, no, and there was also, it just came out that it's vascular and not respiratory, even though that's what the medical community at large had been assuming. It's just they weren't allowed to talk about it because it was, up until about a month and a half ago, officially a respiratory virus, even though they knew it was vascular.
You mentioned. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No.
Oh, yeah. So you had mentioned those rules, right? And you had gotten to a point where you were referring to, like, if you do not have enough data, or you cannot conclude something rationally or whatever without reason, without a doubt, right? Withhold judgment. It just draws me back to how people are driven by their temperaments versus anything, scientific in thought.
Mhm.
And I had perhaps at the risk of being an object of shame here, I did get vaccinated. I got very sick. But, what was odd to me is, right, it was almost like the stickers they give you when you vote. Like, I voted. They give you a sticker saying I got vaxxed, right? And I just threw that away because I thought it was kitschy. But it did make me think, like, you literally wear that on your surface, sure, as you do the voting thing. And, of course, that just suggests, just by virtue of how it's on the surface, that this is not a thought ingested quite much in the psyche. And then, I kind of wondered about voting systems, right? So it's almost as if, like, people will get the satisfaction of engaging in the political process by voting, even if that is not that meaningful. And it's like the voting day, going to the ballots, is a drug to make yourself believe that you're behaving as a responsible citizen, when in fact it's just one day punching a ballot, and actually it doesn't really extend meaningfully beyond that. And so just these two observations that occurred to me when I got that sticker, I thought pointed to what you were referring to. So in other words, people are governed by their temperament, and that, like, literally any cultural mechanism or political process is based on illusion. And, like, that is how people derive, consider the financial industry capitalizing on abstractions in terms of money, down to demonize Assange enough by focusing on things unsubstantial to who he is or what he does. Everything is about the creation of illusions. That is a long thing to say, I know, talking way too much, but does this make any sense?
Yeah, it reminds me of Edward Bernays, who came up with the modern advertising, and he was Freud's nephew. And that's basically how he described it. That like you have to get these people to think that they decided what you wanted them to do.
Actually, I mean, I was talking to Juan Passarelli the other morning, and he and I were discussing, like, in one respect, people choose these things, but in another, there are all sorts of things to overwhelm people away from the most substantive issues of life. Say, just needing to survive, right? Working a job that kills your soul in order to have children or a home, or literally just as basic as, like, I don't know, feeding yourself, right? With a messed up system that you can't. I mean, I've known quite a few people who have had nightmarish experiences of food stamps, right? So, in one respect, people choose this, but in another, they're so overwhelmed that it's difficult for them to go beyond that. And actually, Juan and I were discussing something Chomsky once said, which was that the student debt system, for example, is designed such that people will have to take the highest paying jobs or preoccupy themselves so much with that pursuit in order to rehabilitate themselves from staggering debt that they can't really engage in political processes or the meaningful exercise of themselves. And so the illusion is kind of something unavoidable that people just like the pain of not, like people in sort of the most fundamental political movements. Like, look at Assange. I mean, what he's going through right now. The risk people take in deviating from the norm around oppressive mechanisms like that is like terminal, literally, like 175 years terminal. So deviations are not great for most people, right?
It reminds me of what Dr. Andrew Kaufman in an interview said that you go to med school and there's a lot of hazing, and then you're in debt, and then you come into the industry, and you find out that, like, for you to get paid, you have to toe the party line, whatever it is, your association or whatever, even if you don't agree, because if you step out of line, which is what happened with certain drugs that they were using at the beginning of the COVID crisis, where they demonized them, and then they threaten their licenses. So then you can't really be who you want to be, even if you're the best, even if you had a scholarship, even, you still have to pay bills. So there's a one person, one vote in terms of politics, but in terms of the economy, it's not one person, one vote. It's whoever's got the money has the votes. That was Yanis Varoufakis, the Greek finance minister. He said that when they separated money from politics, like the king didn't own the money anymore, didn't control the money, that's when you had this ability for them to play like, oh, we can't do this because the banks, or the banks go, we can't do this because of politicians.
I get that. I hadn't thought about the Greek politician you had mentioned in a long time. And yeah, you'll have to forgive me. I'm a bit foggy-headed actually because the vaccine is still affecting me.
Which one did you get?
I
got the Pfizer, and the day after, I literally couldn't raise my head from the pillow, and I don't
This
know.
is the first one?
No, it's the second one. I got the second one not too long ago.
Yeah,
I'm diabetic.
that's from your lymph nodes getting inflamed due to the reaction or the vaccine. I don't know. I'm kind of on both sides on this. I almost lost family members, during this crisis, and I saw it going around, and at the same time, I'm thinking about this from a medical perspective. What would actually be the alternative from, doing what everybody was saying to do?
Well, the thing is, they had other treatments, but
Like what?
they were not being used. Ivermectin, budesonide. Well, HCQ, they did a study, but they used 10 times the dose, so they got bad results, which was actually, that paper was actually kicked out because
Yeah,
they found out it was like...
But those are preventative medicines for infections. That's not for inoculations.
They've used them for treatment also. Actually, there was one woman in Buffalo, her mother was on a ventilator, and her doctor agreed to give her ivermectin, but the hospital denied. She went and got a court order, and then the hospital denied again, and then finally they enforced it. I don't know what happened to her, but the reason why they can do that, I mean, theorizing why they would do that is because to get an emergency use authorization, there has to be no alternative treatments. Same thing happened during
The woman
the
who
AIDS crisis.
sued, the woman who sued or whose family sued for her to be able to take that particular drug or series of drugs it was with like 30 hours she was off. Within 48 hours she was out of ICU.
Yeah, and you know what's weird? Ivermectin is an anti-parasitic, and when I was watching a lot of Dr. Tom Cowan, he said they never really isolated a virus in history, but there are a lot of these pandemics in the past that were actually more attributed to either bacterial or parasitic infections.
What about
So
MERS?
we don't know
We had MERS.
really
We had
what
the avian flu that went over throughout most of Asia. I mean, this is something that is new to the Western world, besides the 1900 pandemic of yellow fever. But this is not something that's this is something new to the United States, but not new to other parts of the world. Am I wrong here?
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, like, when you look at, for example, the first few months data, even now, the average age of COVID death is, I forget the exact numbers, 73 or something
78.
like that. 78, but the life expectancy is 75.
Sorry,
So,
74. I apologize.
yeah, and I think the life expectancy is 72 or 73 in the United States. So if you look at the statistics, that means if the people who died of COVID did not lose a year of life on average.
Yes,
It
but they have
doesn't mean-
they have long-term problems like fibrosis of the lungs, which is not a reversible condition. You
And how? What's
you're having
what's
people
the-
an acceptable O2 saturation rate is above 92% or above 90. We're seeing people who have O2 sat rates in the 80s after COVID due to fibrosis, due to their lungs not functioning properly, and honestly,
At what rate does that happen at the people that contract it out of the like 0.06% of the population?
it's
that
actually
does?
it's actually very common. There's this new stuff that's that they're seeing in the long-term data where people are taking these.
Do you think that may have anything to do with the fact that they spent a year misdiagnosing it as respiratory?
Ooh,
Don't know. Honestly, don't know.
there's another factor
Does
too.
that bear a little bit of investigation and perhaps some looking into ways that we could use certain combinations of drugs as prophylaxis?
There's only one medication that's that was put in
going
a
forward.
trial for the fibrosis for the COVID-19, but it's similar to like a stem cell treatment, and I forget what kind of cell that they're using. They were the only place that they're actively were doing clinical trials was Israel, but the medication was marketed as something else. But as far as reversing the damage of the lungs, this was the only thing that showed any
Yeah. No,
fruition,
I mean going forward with proper identification of this as a vascular thing, with knowing that there are certain combinations of drugs that if taken as a prophylaxis, reduce your ability of the percentage of you contracting it just astronomically. There's a fantastic study out of Norway on that. There are ways to make that incredibly uncommon in the incredibly small amount of people that get this thing. that we decided to reorganize society over and turn
We
our
also-
healthcare information over to Peter Thiel for.
We also are missing a few other variables, which TLAV goes into a lot of times. First of all, when you keep people locked down, they're not outdoors, and Americans are chronically low on vitamin D. Being indoors, it just makes it worse, right? And there's a theory that that's why winter tends to have higher cases of illness, even though there's viruses going around all the time, because people aren't really as stocked up on vitamin D. And the second one is the masks. And this is really shady. What happened? I think it was on Science Direct. There was a peer-reviewed study that masks cause issues, right? Whatever it is, bacterial buildup and stuff like that. Because people are not changing their masks. They're wearing the same one all day.
We had a 600% increase in bacterial pneumonia last year.
Well,
Yeah,
they're also horrible for the environment too. The surgical ones specifically.
Yeah, they're like some kind of fiber, right? They're not using like paper.
There's types of microplastics in there as well that aren't good for us, as well as the fact that they're not good for the environment. I mean, like, well, I live on the coast, but like I go to the beach and I see them littered across the whole coastline, and just pollution has increased because of
There's masks in every parking lot,
yeah, because of the
street.
vast use of masks now. So.
Very
That
gross.
study was peer-reviewed, and what happened is that they didn't have anything against it. I guess they couldn't like discredit it like officially, you know, with other peers. So the editor decided to pull the paper, and that really seeing that happen in science is just like this censorship, and now Twitter is going to be censoring what they deem is anti-vax. I mean, you could be pro-vax and say, I'm not sure about this vaccine, and they'll say it's you're anti-vax, or according to the Whitney Webb, right? What is it? She didn't actually give any false information. It's just that she would actually undermine vaccine confidence. That's Orwellian. Like, if the confidence has to be done through PR, that's a problem.
Well, there, like I was saying this, in November when Sputnik 5 was out, and Russia offered us, like 5 million doses, right? But everybody hated it because it was Russian in the political world, right? And I've been traveling, throughout the year, and a few of the countries I was in, they were already inoculating in December and in January. And only to find out that the safety profile for the Sputnik 5 was pretty damn high, and so was the effectiveness. So, cures were out and could have saved, I don't know, this is my personal view, we could have saved more lives, but, just because it's Russian, they had to throw it out to the outlier.
Yeah, we could have saved more lives in many ways, like not throwing them on ventilators, giving them oxygen instead of high pressurized. What ventilators is a pressurized system, right? There's a whole bunch of things that the CDC and the NIH, we're mandating, like doctors that kind of were going to treat it on their own methods, knowing what, my father, he almost, similar symptoms, almost the same, couldn't breathe, even though he wasn't really, that he got checked for pneumonia for like 3 times. He went to the different doctors. No problem, no pneumonia. And then one day he's going up the hill to like pick up the garbage cans, and my sister sees him, and he can't breathe. Like he could breathe, but he has no energy. So he went to the hospital, and they couldn't figure out exactly what happened to him. They did do an angiogram, and they found like slight blockage, like, minor. For a 70-year-old, nothing, But they still couldn't find out what was the problem. So they just ended up doing that, and then they let him go, and he was fine. So I wonder, that vascular thing, 2018 was like one of the worst flu seasons, actually. The UK, what is it called? NHS, they had people being treated on the street this year they have capacity. I remember last month they were saying on UK column like 60%. So like we are saying that it's a pandemic, we are saying it's deadly, but we're ignoring that there's other years that were worse. And like you said, there were past Asian flus.
The suggestion that this was a vascular disease, that should have been the first thing they should have looked at, because even in the official numbers, if you look at the site like worldometers.info, it has all these numbers on it. The number one pre-existing condition among the dead people is a cardiovascular disease, and it's like way ahead of the number two, which is diabetes, right? So you should have already looked at that from the start. Now, I said in like a previous broadcast, it can also have to do with that medicine they claim to have at the start, which is an anti-HIV medicine they have been using.
Remdesivir?
Yeah, that causes heart problems, right? It causes.
Oh, they were dosing people.
Yeah, it has as a side effect has heart problems. This is not like weird information. This is just on the official side effects of this medicine. You can just find this, and it has this risk because irregularity in your heart rate and stuff. So those are the two things. So either it's because of this medicine that the number is higher, especially if you use it on older people who have a weaker heart, etc. But also you could have looked at the suggestion that it was a vascular disease from the start. I mean, it's way ahead. It's 13.2% on confirmed cases, with diabetes on 9.2% as the number two. And chronic respiratory disease on 8%. So you see like the cardiovascular disease is 5.2% higher than people with a chronic respiratory disease on deaths. Arguing that all these numbers, official numbers, are real, right? That's just, let's consider that.
Well, the whole thing about it that confuses me is, like the average age of COVID death is higher than life expectancy. And it makes me think that a lot of other diseases like heart conditions and such that were undiagnosed until people had the symptoms that they saw on TV and they went to the hospital was counted as COVID, even though it was something else.
Oh yeah, definitely. Actually, an aunt of my dad had chemotherapy, and her entire immune system was like offline, right? And then she got the COVID thing, and she died, and it was classified as COVID, but she was literally dealing with like terminal cancer. So I've dealt with it myself, close to me. So, yeah.
The other thing about it that's really weird is, so like in most countries like Ireland, UK, when you look at the total deaths of like 2019, 2018, and 2020, 2020 is actually lower than 2018, right? Most countries, except for the United States. In the last month, like when they do the final, like every month they update it. In January, it was in line. I think it was I don't remember the exact number, but it was like 0.2 million less than like 2019 or something like that. It was really close. But what happened is at the last minute, like in the middle of, I want to say middle of January or the end, they added another 200,000 cases. And then they did it again. They added like another 150 over the last 2 years average or something like that. But that only came at the last minute. And when you report deaths, this is another weird thing. So like normally when you report a death and they file it on the date of the death, right? So let's say I had paperwork backed up and you died in August. Well, it gets refiled into August data. But they've been doing this recent thing. It's almost like Biden vote count, where last minute they'll dump in a whole bunch of deaths that were from months before, but they get counted like it was today. So you see these spikes, and then you see these like flat areas on the death, what do we call it, the mortality charts. They're playing with the numbers. I mean, that's clear.
Yeah. Okay.
that's
Well,
been
here
going
they're
on.
not.
Go ahead.
Here they seem to be not playing with the numbers because the total deaths of COVID is now 17,413 on official numbers, right? Well, that's in a 2 years period, right? We had two flu seasons we passed, so that is about what 8,500 deaths per year. Well, a normal flu season here has 20 to 25,000 deaths in our country. So it's like 1/3 of the normal number, and there are no more flu cases in our country now. So just saying.
Yeah,
It's
on
about
our end, I did know some things that were going on. Is that there was for every COVID case that was going on, there was federal tax dollars that would go to the hospitals. So that might have been incentive to fudge the numbers.
Yeah, I think they get like 16,000 per COVID patient, but then if they put them on a ventilator, it's doubled to 32,000 or something like that. And my state, New York, they just went hog wild with the ventilators, and then Cuomo claimed he didn't have enough, but it turned out he did have enough. They just didn't actually report that they had them in storage. Funny, right?
What do you guys think about the situation that's going on in India right now?
Well, the rash of deaths and then the construction of mass graves. I had only heard about this. I don't really know what to think. I was in New Delhi about 2 years ago, and I was just astounded by how heavily populated it was, and then how many areas were so abjectly poor beyond the U.S. And then, of course, the assumption to be made there, rightly or wrongly, is that was it because of poverty and then the consequent lack of sanitation, or is there something else going on? I don't know if that's entirely relevant, but actually you're bringing up something I was discussing with a friend earlier, and that was almost a spiritual experience in India, seeing that poverty there is so much radically worse than I at least have perceived, right, visually, right, in the U.S. anywhere.
Yeah, they have caste systems still over there. You aware of that?
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, so like if you're if you're in one caste, you're not allowed to marry in another somebody who's in a higher caste system as you.
It's sort of like here, though, where you're rarely, if ever, going to be, if you're working class, you're rarely, if ever, going to be with someone that's in the upper middle class.
Correct.
Except in our case, it's voluntary in quotes. I'm trying to find the article on India.
Yeah,
the India thing.
Go ahead.
Sorry, the India thing. There was a lot, kind of like in the videos of China. Like there's no context. You don't know when they're from. Sometimes the media plays stuff from like years ago. Like the full ICUs, they had a video from 2018, and it was used on the mass networks. And one of the India videos where they showed death and was a video from a gas leak in the past. I don't know, because AP or whatever, like you're a journalist and you can pretend like this is happening now, whatever, individual people. But the weird thing is that around that time, they did a lot of these shutting down these private farms. They're pushing the whole globalization over there. So there's been an issue with food for a while. So who knows if the food shortages are causing problems? I don't know.
Yeah, I was reading, a couple weeks ago they were like a week and a half ago they were having 300 and something thousand cases in like a day of COVID, and they were having death rates of like 5,000 a day.
The whole cases thing is a weird thing too, because that's the PCR test, right? And they've been running up to 40 cycles in most places. But now with the vaccine out, there's a new document where they give like guidelines on how to test vaccinated people. And they put the cycles below 28 specifically, right? And Fauci himself said anything above 30 is garbage. You get a lot of false positives. Because I don't know how they do it, but they like amplify the signal to try to find the strain or whatever they're looking for, the genetic code. And when you go above 30, it's like whatever 10 to the power 30 that you're looking for, however much you have the viral load. And at that point, it's so little. Even like certain benign stuff, like a banana or whatever. I forget. The Tanzanian president tested a banana or something, and it came up positive because there's a lot of genetic code. It repeats. Like there's different things that have that code, but in a different area. I mean, I'm not sure exactly how that test works, but why are they saying now after the vaccine? We got to test them at cycle 28 or less. But when it comes to the testing and all these cases that they're saying, they're using up to 40 cycles. And they're not disclosing how many cycles did you get a positive in. Like, let's say you got a positive with 12. That means you have a lot. But if I got a positive with like 35, that means I have almost nothing viral load. It's just like, oh, and there's no gold standard to compare the test to. You know, like you have that, like the simplest test, weight, right? You know, a kilogram, you need to have like a reference of what is a kilogram. With this test, they're using it without actual like gold standard reference. So each lab could even have different, you could call it different sensitivities. So I don't know. When they talk about cases going by that test, it makes me skeptical.
So that guys.
Yeah. What else was on the topics?
Oh, yeah, I have it open.
Oh God. Let's go with somebody else's topic because mine are kind of weak.
No, the pipeline stuff is good because Steve just did an interview with Robert Yeager.
Yeah. So they were, it was a, hacker group going by Dark Side. A lot of people were concluding it was, a lot of, I heard a lot of rumors it was Russian. I highly doubt that. Wouldn't put it past a Russian hacker, but I wouldn't blame it on the Russian government. They paid out the ransom today. You know that, right?
No, they paid out the ransom on Friday.
Yeah.
According to the Bloomberg article, the ransom was paid out within hours of them receiving the threat. They just turned the pipeline back on yesterday.
Yeah. They gave them a tool, and the decryption tool apparently was very slow. So, yeah.
Okay, so
There are
what do we
some
know
people
about
claiming it is.
what do we know about Dark Side?
Absolutely not.
There are some people claiming it is the Russian government or something.
No.
That doesn't make sense.
They're doing it much more nebulously because there are significant like new ecosystems around dealing with ransomware.
Yeah,
There's
it's a whole like underground like industry going on right now with it.
Yeah.
They have insurance against it, so you can buy a policy. Yeah.
Okay, well, I saw NBC was blaming Russians 4 days ago, but the situation there is a little bit different than people think.
Yeah,
it's not like that. That is not like a government like the U.S. government sends like a cyber army to hack something. No. You have hacker groups like in St. Petersburg, etc. They will freelance for the Russians. They will freelance for Europeans. It doesn't really matter, right? They do their own stuff.
Yeah. So. At first, I thought it was an activist group, but the fact that there was a high ransom, that probably wasn't an activist group.
Oh, and also, what is it? When was it, Steve? When Robbie first reported the spill?
So back in January, was when we had him on. I'm gonna go over to his. I'm gonna go over to his Rockfin and see when the first article came out. Do. So yeah, it was back in January, and then the spill first was discovered in like September or October of last year. And it's now more than likely going to become the largest gasoline spill in U.S. history. We've been reporting on it for 4 months now. And screaming for people to cover it because it got to the point to where they reported that it went from 60,000 gallons to 1.2 million gallons. And it went from, but there's no way it's gonna affect the water table, to the mayor of Huntersville, North Carolina, saying it's under the water table. And still not a peep from anyone outside, like us at MCSC and a couple other people. Jimmy Dore eventually got the memo and covered it. But even that didn't generate any additional coverage to, again, we're gonna find out on the 29th of May, maybe, the largest gas spill in U.S. history, from a pipeline notorious for doing this. Like 10%, 20%. No, I think it's more. Do you remember, Jones, the percentage of pipeline incidents that are colonials? I can pull that up too on Robbie's article.
I don't remember.
But so I mean, before this hack happened, this is kind of important. Before this hack happened, PIMSA, the organization, federal organization, tasked with like toothlessly regulating this, condemned the entire 5,500-mile pipeline. They're supposed to answer for that. They're currently under federal investigation. We've been reporting on this again for months, and we had Robbie on to disclose that like the moment he found it out. It was like 6 weeks ago when that happened.
Okay, Steve, Robbie said Colonial Pipeline was responsible for approximately 1 of every 10 pipeline spills in the U.S. since 2000.
Since 2000.
But the thing is, they didn't notice that this thing was leaking. But that I call bullshit on, because I used to work in utilities, and they had a pipeline coming to the power plant, and they have meters. They have meters where they feed in whatever they're feeding. Let's say it counts 1 million, and then they have branches.
It tracks volume.
Yes, they would know that, like, let's say 1 million went in and only 750 came out on the branches. They would know that there's a leak. Why isn't there like some kind of high-tech system of, let's get some drones out there to look for it, you know?
Oh, well, that's in the global health security document.
Yeah, they'll do it against us. They'll come after us. They need the drones to monitor us, but when it comes to a pipeline,
well, they need the drones to monitor our agriculture, according to the report. But with the whole, I mean, there's a whole, not to get too far away from it, or at least back to the ransomware bit. A whole new cottage industry growing up around ransomware on the like surveillance tech and security side and the national security side. And this is going to be pointed to as like the thing that gets an incredible amount of like funding and public-private partnerships and contracts with all of our favorite people in big tech in on combating ransomware at the expense of more of our privacy.
You know, the weird thing about that what is it called, cyber reason
Cyber
report
reason.
that I didn't understand because I used to do computers way back, but I understand the basics. So what this ransom does on your computer, it uploads it downloads itself with a script or whatever, which is fine. It runs itself, and then it tries to copy the local password database. And then when it takes that password, if it finds like an admin password of a server, then it tries to get on the server and install itself. But the thing is, a lot of times on a server, like let's say you and I have video folders on a server, or we have an app that uses a server, it doesn't give you I can't run something on the server. It's just giving me the file, or it's giving me the data, like a database or something. What this ransomware that they were claiming it did with the billing and all that stuff, it got on the server and it ransomwared the actual server. It's not like your desktop, you know, your stuff locally got messed up. No, it did everything. That's weird because that you can't do that easily unless if like you're so stupid that everyone has administrator privileges.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're in the right room to have that discussion. What do you nerds think? Lubers, you got something for this.
You want me to explain about ransomware?
No, but how did it get to the point where it can mess up their billing system? Because that's what Robbie Yeager reported.
They're using an
Messed up the
exploit.
invoice.
Come on. There could have been a known vulnerability on their system, and they just got in. And that
You call this a privilege escalation, right? You have
Yeah.
You gain access, you have lower rights, and you use privilege escalation to get more rights in the system. So yeah, like Tyler says, it can be known exploits. Like if you can identify like what kind of operating system someone uses or some company uses, then you can either like look into existing exploits, right? Or yeah, maybe you have your own 0 days. Like I don't know what kind of like operating system they specifically used, but like if you look at like what in the past was used, like with WannaCry, for example, these were all like known exploits since that big NSA hack when these NSA tools were leaked. And those were like all spread around, and then suddenly this exploit was mass used, like against like millions of systems all at once.
We have a question that doesn't ransomware just manipulate the default on for remote assistance on PCs?
Yeah, it could. Yeah, that's one way. Yeah.
But it's not unique to that's not like the only way it operates.
No, because you can even have like worms using it, like self-copying, self-spreading. You have all kinds of methods. The ransomware pretty much the only thing the ransomware does is pretty much lock the system. And there's like a billion methods on how it can get in a system and how it can lock it up, right? I mean, yeah. You can have a USB stick locally. You put the USB stick in your computer and it has like a ransomware on it. It infects your system and it's locked. You have to pay a Bitcoin or something to some shady character. Yeah.
But usually it's usually infecting like my desktop. Let's say I have documents locally and stuff, and then I get ransomware. But has there been cases where like ransomware has actually got on the server and just like totally taken out database or something like that?
Yeah, of course, companies are being targeted by that all the time. It also doesn't get published all the time. Like many of these negotiations are in secret. These companies don't want anyone to know about it because they're like on the stock market and whatever. And if someone finds out about it, they're going to lose like half the value on the stock market. So yeah, this kind of stuff happens all the time, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to find the PDF because I remember reading it and I was just like, it's maybe they were just trying to sell their services.
I think it's how you define the ransomware only as something that like locks your system or does something to your system that forces you to pay ransom, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much the only way you can define. And the rest of the things, like whether you do it like through a USB stick, or it is a self-replicating worm, or self-spreading, or it uses like uh, it can be injected into systems, right? It is there's a lot of
And Alamo, I'm looking in the chat here. They did operate. It was running manually.
Yeah.
Like they had
I-
to admit that too after after several days. They were like, "Oh yeah, it's this is." They admitted it was operating manually after they said they weren't going to turn it back on. Like that, it had been operating manually.
Yeah, and
Is-
Robbie
I-
said,
Go ahead.
"Oh, sorry, you on your show, Robbie said that it didn't affect the mechanical or electrical systems. That it affected the billing system, their invoice system."
Yeah, basically.
I can't find the PDF, but yeah, it looked a little cheap and yeah, I don't know. It just smelled like BS. Want to do another topic?
Sure, somebody pick one.
I'm looking through your list. It is a good list, by the way.
There's a lot of work on
Oh,
it.
you want to talk about the NRA?
Wait, I had one question about the vaccine. I'm confused. Pfizer is getting FDA approval, but I thought the trials are until like 2023. So I don't know. Does anyone know what the details are with that?
I didn't write that. I don't know.
No,
You wrote that.
I put
Bro.
yeah, because they're saying that they're getting approval, but then I'm like, the trials are till 2023 January. So like, how can they approve it before the trials are over? That's kind of what I'm confused about. Does anyone know what's going on with that, or is it something else that they're getting?
I don't know. That would go into like FDA law. I'm not entirely sure how that's even working, because there's a
Yeah.
process, and there has to be enough data. But I don't know too much about like how the legal terms or what the requirements for the FDA to approve anything like that.
It says 3 days ago that I was looking into it, guys. It's called the Emergency Use Authorization (EUA) for the Pfizer vaccine. So apparently,
Yeah, I know. I understand. I understand that, but they actually have articles. I think the media in the United States just basically publishes whatever they want. It probably doesn't mean anything, but it said Pfizer looking to get FDA approval. And then in the article, it's misleading because it's talking about the kids testing, which is now going to be happening under 12, I think. But why would they say as the title that Pfizer applies for FDA approval when, like the trials are not over? You can't just get approval until the trials are over, then you have the data. Which is, I almost feel like the media does that on purpose. Like, how on fact-checking sites, they'll pick a technicality to take apart your argument. Well, they're doing the complete opposite here, where they could just say whatever they want in the title. As long as the article doesn't say a lie, they'll be like, yeah, well, we said the right thing, even though the title is misleading. That's the kind of
Clickbait.
weird thing. And I'm looking up right now. I can't find any details of it.
It's
just clickbait.
Clickbait.
Yes.
the FDA does claim there has. Okay, they make a claim. They make this claim. They say the available safety data to support the EUA in adolescents down to 12 years of age include 2,260 participants ages 12 through 15 years old enrolled in an ongoing randomized placebo-controlled clinical trial in the United States.
2,200. That's a shit fucking sample size, by the way, for a vaccine.
Yeah, and they
It
said
is.
they were followed for safety for at least 2 months. So
I see it now. Yeah, it says what FDA approval of Pfizer COVID's vaccine for 12 to 15-year-olds could mean for herd immunity. But the thing is, it's not an approval. It's the FDA giving them emergency use authorization. But the
Yeah.
approval is for their trial. So this is like they're saying approval in the title because people look through the newspaper, I mean, or the websites or whatever, and they'll see approval, FDA approval, even though it is not possible. How do you prove something that just started last January when the trials are
Yeah.
until? Yeah, I almost feel like that. Thanks for helping me clear that up because on TLAB forum they were confused.
Well, I mean, plus, like, accepting emergency authorization as approval is incredibly dangerous. But yeah, I'm also pretty sure that that the emergency authorization came along with, of course, a CDC recommendation for vaccine use between 12 and 15. Those were the ages they gave. So
Yeah.
Because why? Because why? Are they at a risk pool?
Because money, this is all about money, and anything else is naive.
Well, I mean, this is about control. This bit is normally, and money, and money is also a control mechanism. But this is significantly broader in terms of the scope and reach of control.
By the
Yeah,
way,
this is something they do with their control, you know? First of all, they got everybody singing along with the COVID bullshit, and now they can keep on, filling your heads with disinformation. This is about information and control over information. It's not about any virus. And, we're probably going to get caught up, but there's a chance that this is all disinformation, top to bottom.
yeah, I mean, like that. This article where they're saying FDA approval, which is not approval, but they're trying to sell it in some of the titles like they're getting approval, which is impossible. So I'm wondering, like, you're right. I mean, it seems like it's more of a psyop, like all these things that are going around, like now gain of function, which I don't believe in, because the thing is, this thing, when you look at it, it is actually has not risen the total death rate. But the numbers are high because everyone that gets tested for it, even though there are false positives, if they die, they get counted as a COVID death, right? I mean, that's easily done when you change the policy. So then, like, what the fuck gain of function is being promoted for, if not to promote fear in people thinking like the next one might be like really deadly and it might come out of a lab in like the middle of Iran or whatever.
Well, as long as
Well,
they
yeah.
got you scared, they have won. That's pretty much what this is about. You're going around scared and waiting for mommy and daddy on TV to tell you what to think.
That's actually a torture technique, where you get someone to feel like they're helpless, and then you come out with something that doesn't necessarily empower them, but it gives them a little bit of relief, and it's psychological because it's like there's this fear. You're gonna die. You're gonna die. You're gonna die. Oh, we have something for you.
Yeah, exactly. It's the Jesus method of fucking someone up.
Yeah, I put that on the list. The plutonium.
So
I know it's funny because I literally had that tab open, and then I
Yeah,
found it.
it's kind of
Oh,
weird
snap.
because plutonium was found at the bottom of the ocean, and they weren't sure how it get, because as far as we know, that plutonium had to be manufactured through refining uranium, and apparently they think that it ended up at the bottom of the ocean because of a supernova at some point in the ancient Earth. It was the most bizarre shit, and they found it near Japan.
Yeah. I mean, I'm curious as to how like the plutonium would end up in like on the ocean floor as opposed to somewhere else.
I'm curious
Like,
as to who owns the deep sea mining permits for that particular area.
See, that's the weird thing is like I do know a little bit about how elements are created, but it's to get anything from a star higher than iron. You need to have a denser star, which would be like a two neutron stars, which are like right
mhm.
before it would collapse into a black hole. These are like the most compact element that you can compact star that you can get. And when these two collide, they would create the heavier elements that we see on the periodic table. So it might have been from something like that, but that'd be kind of creepy if, like ancient Earth, there were two of those things near our solar system, because that would have really killed anything.
Well,
There's
I
an
mean, yeah. No. I'd like love to understand how it ended up in the ocean and what particularly makes it like I don't know if it passed through land or when exactly this happened in terms of time in relation to like the changing geology of the earth with regards to like how much of earth was covered by the ocean at the time, but yeah. This is
Yeah,
fascinating.
yeah. This could have been anywhere from like I think the Earth is like what, like 4 billion, somewhere around there. So it could be anywhere
Yeah.
between, yeah, somewhere. Could have been when there was just still particulates or small dust clouds accumulating. It could have been at that point. Who knows?
there was
Yeah.
there's a pretty cool channel called Suspicious Observers, and they do a lot of space weather, and they have alternate theories of certain things. And they stumbled on this CIA declassified, ghost-written book theorizing this cycle of the sun where there's micronova. And I don't know, I think they based it on like historical stories of like old civilizations that they heard, seeing the sun having a halo and all this crazy stuff. But anyway, so when they went on the moon, they found glass, right? There's like a red glass, a green glass, and a black glass. The black glass you can't make in a volcano. It's not hot enough. So how did they get there? We don't know. And then when they took the glass and they put it under a microscope, they saw tracks. Like, you know, when you have, I guess when you have a nova, you output, I forget what particles, but these tracks are like radiation tracks going right through the glass. Most likely they were created in the sun, and the radiation tracks was from whatever it was, nova event. And
I do have an
yep.
alternative theory about this, because they think that when Earth was when the moon, they think there was actually two moons, because the one side of the moon actually has 13 miles, the crust is 13 miles thicker. They think that there were two moons and then they had collided together.
Yeah, but I mean, like, how do you get black glass if a volcano can't even make it? Like the volcano temperature, whatever it is, I forget what it is, can't make that black glass. Like you need like something way hotter. The other two glasses would be possible, but not that one. And then those radiation tracks. So I don't know. I mean, if like even the plutonium, it could have come from 1,000 light years away. We don't know. I don't even know
Does it
what's
really?
the closest.
Does it really
Sorry,
matter? Is this
no.
important? The sun has corona, by the way.
What?
Thor, was it you that created that plutonium to make your hammer?
It was
Uh-oh.
basically to make you, ask questions. So, but the glass was, of course, made in Fantasyland. But yeah, seriously, how did we end up on the sun here?
Oh, because
Because
how?
we were talking about the discovery of plutonium on the ocean floor, which could have come from a supernova, which is fascinating and could have some interesting implications for the future.
So escapism then. I guess.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, I'm all for, like, I'm going to Mars with Elon. Gonna be chilling out on Mars with Elon. And we'll be watching Earth go to bit through our, telescope. And yeah, I just think it's a bit abstract, just like we just ended up on the sun now. But the sun has a corona, so that's a Sedgeway, if anybody used it.
Yeah, no, just because they are like they have like a much shorter lifespan than the Earth, that they must have been created recently. Yeah, this means like that can happen any moment right now. These particles can just drop on the Earth and then
Yep.
expand in something bigger, right? And then you have like all radioactive stuff all over the planet. That's kind of weird, of course. It's kind of yeah.
Oh, and our magnetic field has been weakening a lot. And the recent, I think Thursday, there was supposed to be a solar flare, and all the official sources said it was going to be like a 3. It's scale 1 to 8,
Yeah, because
and
it's been wobbling for a while.
they got a 7, which is a pretty strong solar storm on Thursday, I think. So what he was saying, it's kind of scary that like a regular flare, like a 3, now is like registering as a 7. That means our magnetic field is getting weaker.
Yeah, it's been wobbling for a couple of years now. They think that it's supposed to reverse. Like they said, any day, but that could mean 100 years or 1,000 years. They're not sure, but they think that the wobble that's been going on is just the precursor to the poles flipping. That would definitely fuck
Yeah,
up our magnetosphere, which protects us from the solar radiation.
yeah, that's the joke that Thor was saying about going to the moon. Like if you go past this magnetic field, the radiation is insane, and going to the moon, you have to hit it and be on the surface. That's another question. But yeah, if our magnetic field collapses or even for a short time is lower, that period we'll be cooking.
Yeah, you know what I've heard that for long deep space missions, they've been thinking about using just water. Water blocks out a lot of gamma radiation.
Yeah, they use that in nuclear power plants, heavy water. That's what they use to
Oh,
regulate.
H3O. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's H2O, but it's with an extra neutron. Like an isotope of water.
Yeah, I think it's called
So like
H3O.
deuterium, they call it.
Yeah,
Heavy
deuterium.
water.
Yeah, it's heavy water. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like that would make sense, but when they went to the moon, they didn't have that. So I don't know. That whole thing I never used to question, and nowadays when I got more into the seeing how science has been corrupted and hidden and manipulated, someone sent me some stuff on the moon landing, and I'm like, because I wouldn't have even thought about that Van Allen belt thing. I thought it goes all the way to the moon. It goes out, I forget how many miles.
Well, I read on the internet that space doesn't really exist and the Earth is flat.
Well, we are still flattening the curve for a year and a half.
Yeah,
Maybe it'll
that's kind of
become
the
flat.
problem here. If we want to go to space, I want freedom on Earth first. Then I'm with you.
Well, you don't want to spread the Federation Empire around the solar system, like Star Trek?
Yeah, that's kind of the problem, that whole attitude about owning everything. But right now we can't manage our own home, and I think the whole space talk is just distraction. Every time people start talking about real Earth problems, they want to go to fucking Mars.
Well, in the past, what was it with religion? The idea of being saved is to go to another realm or to the clouds or whatever. And now you have this space thing, which is like the new religion, you can call it.
Yeah, that's pretty much the parallel, right? Well, back to Earth then. Anybody have any solutions? We're in kind of a big pile of shit right now.
Okay,
Well,
what is
seeing
the
what happened
solution?
with-
Well, you
I
know,
mean,
that's my question.
seeing what's happening in Israel, for example, like how long they got away with doing what they're doing, skirting law, international law, human rights law. And now it's like at the time when these people start fighting back, now you have Turkey putting a stand up. So until people here start fighting back, let's say the economic system or the politics or the medical or whatever system, it's not going to happen. You know, like I almost feel like if you did try to do something, you would just be squashed by the bootlickers, the sycophants.
Well, you know, operators, people who do stuff, they are the fewer, and people who follow and have that slave mentality, they are the majority, unfortunately. And that's how, you know, everything is cultivated. That's how society is bred to listen to a leader and follow something that is supposed to be a well thought out system. Of course, when you grow up, you understand that these are just a bunch of overgrown kids and they're fucking everything up. And now we're here without any power, you know, unable to do anything about it. And I wish I had some magic wand to make everybody adults. I do, but I don't.
Well, there was a Stargate. I know you were joking about Stargate before, but there was a movie where these aliens or whatever, these godlike semi-physical beings had control over Earth, and the way that they had control over Earth was they have people believe in them, right? And the people that believed in them were essentially brainwashed. They couldn't think for themselves. They thought in terms like a hive. And they found this technology, and the technology would break that spell, but it would also be a violation of their free will, you know. And they had all this argument about it, like, well, should we do this? Should we not? And it's funny, like when you watch sci-fi, there's always this like the good guy never ever really fights with an even hand. They're always like, oh, am I doing too much? Am I being too harsh? But the reality is that that's what they teach us when we're growing up. Like, don't question him. He's an adult. Don't talk to her like that. She's a woman, even though you have a valid point. And I almost feel like they trained people to not want to question authority. And if you question authority, even when you're right, there's some kind of weird shame to it. It's almost like in religion, you know, where you can't question the priest or the cardinal or whatever.
Yeah, pretty much that's, you know, how society has cemented it. And you know, I'm going to, you know, criticize, you know, power for power itself. Who gave you the authority? Why do you have authority? And so on and so forth. Well, most people just accept it, and that's where I get pissed off.
Yeah. Well, that's like the vaccine mandates, right? Legally, they're not supposed to be able to tell you have to have the vaccine because it's still not FDA approved, right? So it's you would be in a trial. Like it's telling someone like you have to sign up for this trial to get this job or keep your job. But the thing is, most people don't question it, so they just go with it because they don't want to be the odd one out. They don't want to put up a stink or whatever. And half the time, I mean, like that's what ends up like at my job. People get hurt because they don't say they don't feel safe, and they do something stupid or whatever. Then they get hurt. Then the company tells them, "Oh, it's your fault. You didn't follow the safety." but they couldn't at the time. They were being told to do it unsafe, and they just did it anyway, thinking they would be covered, and that's it. Like you get fucked by the authority that told you to do it. So
Well, you know, I have 3 words for everybody affected by this class action lawsuit. We're actually suing the state for trying to implement such, you know, bullshit in my country. We're a group
wow.
of people like, I think we're 25,000 now. But anyway, we're going in and we're actually filing papers against this. So, you know, anybody who's, you know, actually affected by this, you have to consider actually suing. You know, this is lawsuit land here.
Yeah, I mean, like, what kind of suit is it? It's an actual criminal suit or like a civil suit?
Well, I'll have to go into the details there. I'm not like a lawyer myself, but it's basically about the whole COVID passport thing and how that's,
Oh,
you know, unconstitutional, and and that's the frame of it. I don't know what the
yeah.
lawyers are using as arguments, but yeah, I'll look into it.
The EU, it's very strange, right? Like the EU first said that they were against it because the EU constitution says that you can't, mandate a medical procedure or whatever it is. And then recently they're pushing it, or they passed it. Maybe that's why you guys have it. That's very
We're
strange.
not members of the EU. We opted out. We actually had the, you know, a whole vote on it where everybody went and said yes or no. So we didn't leave that up to any politician. But that's why we're, you know, a bit better off than the rest of Europe. I'm in Norway, by the way.
Yes.
But yeah, this is pretty much about how the authorities just like took some freedoms and, you know, ran with them. And you know, those are our freedoms, and they're not supposed to take them away. It's like the bottom line of the Constitution in almost every constitution on this planet,
Yeah.
that you're your own person, that you,
Yeah.
no authority exists over you automatically,
Yeah.
and that is pretty much what this is about. You know, do you have a choice anymore?
Guys in the chat, they're asking us to talk more about the Israel-Palestine situation. Just saying.
I don't know anything about it.
Well, I do
I
know
mean,
that Israel is they're planning more bombs. That's what I was reading.
That and the military recently converged on their 2 tanks and other APCs and whatnot.
Yeah. They've been moving all their equipment down to the border walls in the past few days. I know about that.
I know the media was playing games. So, like, when they Israel took down that apartment complex or that whatever residential complex, people died, and in the media they put down like Gaza kills 20 Israelis with rockets, and 25 Gaza people die, but they don't say like who killed them. It's clear, like the media is so steered. How is it in Europe?
Same story. In the US. There's no difference there.
I mean, I can ask people who are over there, but it's still early.
Oh, you mean in
What about-
actual?
Yeah, and I'd have to ask them later on in the day. So
Yeah, this was like a day or two into the conflict when they blew up that building in Gaza. Oh, and they're using white phosphorus, but they're pretending like it's for signaling or something like that. When they use it for light, white phosphorus, which is illegal to use.
it's banned under the the International War Court, whatever the hell it's called.
Yeah.
So was there any actual news related to this, or are we just like, uh, hearing the same old story we heard the last 30 years about Israel, bombing and abusing human rights and so on and so forth? And I'm like thinking, is there anything left of Palestine at all? The international community doesn't care. It's just a talking point now. They could have fixed that 30 years ago.
Well, that's the whole thing. Whitney Webb had an article we were talking about earlier. Real quick, the Christians have like this belief that if all this stuff happens in Israel and then they build a temple, whatever, that like the Messiah will come. I'm not really sure if these governments who are military actually care about any religion, even Israel. They're not really religious. They're secular kind of. But what if it's like psychopaths that don't mind people dying, and they're using this like religious excuse to create the conditions?
That's been a kind of a narrative I've thought of for a while. To be honest, like in the back of my head, I never voiced it, but yeah, I've thought about that.
Well, it's straight out of Freemasonry stuff. You get through toil and stress and strife and so on, the perfect man shall come. And, that's pretty much the Messiah you're talking, secular Messiah. That's what they want. But
oh yeah, those are original, not original, but the whatever you call them, Darwinists that are obsessed about competition, but they ignore that a lot of evolution was also cooperation.
yeah, welcome to the peak of eugenics, okay? And these people are more twisted than you actually know. And yeah, they're
They're all
shaping
over.
genes. They're
Well, like,
making a new man, a new human.
well, what about when Damascus fell in Syria? That was written in the Quran as well. I found that kind of weird too.
Oh, I see that the Quran was predicting that as like the end of days or whatever.
Yes, yes.
Well, I think there's more politics than anything connected to this. And if anybody you wants a god, I'm Thor, and they can have me for free. I will abuse them and tell them to go to hell and stuff every day. So yeah, I don't know about this whole religion stuff. If you want to find true religion, you should find the adult self. And I think that would be the best conduit of wisdom as such.
But I mean, like, you have a lot of people who are followers who are afraid, whether genetically or by birth, society, where they just like they always need this like authority, right? And in some cases it's politics, some cases it's science, and for still a lot of people in the world, it's still religion. I mean, so they use that religion as an exploit, like, oh, we know people are religious, so we're going to fulfill some prophecies for them. And it will look like we are the ones on the good side. Because in the Bible, what is it? The good side is the one that, builds a Temple Mount and all that crap. So they're going to ride that wave.
So we have some embedded issues as humans. We seem to believe a lot of crap. And yeah, I don't know if this is just like evolution rearing its ugly head here. Like, we're watching the decline of humans, and we can comment on it, and it's kind of ironic.
Yeah, you got to wonder, though, is it the people that are tricked to become this way, or are the people the ones that lead to governments like this?
Well, people make up government, so I would say humans. I blame the humans.
Yeah, I see it both ways. I see like there's like the humans are lazy at some point when things are good, and then they want more and more wealth, and then they centralize power because it's efficient, right? Like a stock market. And then that stock market takes a life of its own. Like they said in one of the documentaries, that corporation is basically an essential psychopath. it's a living thing. Even though it's not living, it's actually like in itself has its own life that it's fighting for.
Well, I see nature, you know. We come from a world of alphas and betas, and that's pretty much the system here. What we have that's new is this, idea that everybody should be equal and have liberties and such and such and such. Of course, that's a bit counter to what nature wants. Nature wants something to rule over something else. But we're part of nature, and of course our ideas are also part of nature. So I'm thinking like we're about to enter a next step of evolution where we can work more, in unison. And we're not these individuals fighting each other. We see the whole as an individual instead. But who am I? I'm just one person. Come
What
back
is
to life.
what is this dead air about? You have like 13 minutes left, guys.
I grant you existence.
Yeah, I don't know what else to talk about.
We can talk real quick about the Elon Musk thing.
Yeah, so Elon said that he wasn't going to be using BTC for uh, the purchasing of the Tesla cars, and that they were holding on to the supply until BTC mining is more eco-friendly for to mine. I'm not sure if many people are aware of this. I mean, he does have a point, but his statement made a huge dip. Is that to send a Bitcoin from one wallet to another costs as much or is about as much electricity as it would take to charge a Tesla. And this has been a problem that's been mounting for a long time at the ineffectiveness of Bitcoin. But when he said this, I think I think it almost dropped like $5,000. He said,
Yeah,
yeah,
10% right off the value of Bitcoin when he made like one statement, and that is like really, really weird. It's like shows like a huge weakness in the crypto industry.
So let me get this straight. Just moving like one value of Bitcoin from one wallet to another is like charging a Tesla.
yes, yeah.
Well,
And
you'll have to explain this in detail. I don't understand.
Yeah, well, the mining of Bitcoin itself like is now already like taking up more than like the entire electricity of a country like my own country. It was actually given as an example. It like the Bitcoin mining costs more electricity than our entire country produces.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
the
can get the
Netherlands.
mining part because that requires, all these connections and blah blah blah. But just moving like one Bitcoin from one wallet to another, why does that have to like be that energy?
well, you think
Uh,
it takes about 30 minutes for I think it's on average is about 6 verifications, right? So that's 6 different computers that have to decrypt the hash, and it takes about 30 minutes. And on average, when somebody's mining for, let's say, for about, it costs, if you have like a good mining rig, like a really shitty mining rig, to be honest, it can cost you about 150 US a month just to run that thing. Now, if you think that, I don't know how much it costs to charge a Tesla, maybe like, I don't know, $8 to $10 every time you do it. So we have 6 people verifying a transaction. Yeah, it starts adding up after a while.
doesn't it get
So
more
then,
complicated too?
It's a
Like
lot
the
more
bigger the
complicated than it's a lot more complicated than that. I kind of dumb things down as far as the
oh no no no.
go ahead.
Not that. I mean, it gets more complicated the more currency is out there, the more they mine. They hit the saturation. The database is so much bigger.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right about that because there is a because the miners also do process the public ledger as well. So yeah, you got that as added as well.
well, if you actually factored in all those costs, then Bitcoin would, you know, plummet in value. Then
It
it would be just a
it's
fraction of what it is.
it's been very inefficient for a very long time. I mean, right now to move, I think it's more than 10 US to move Bitcoin to any other wallet. I think it's a lot more. I haven't even like checked because I haven't messed with Bitcoin in like 6 months. But I know that the mining fee just to move the coin, it's more than $10 at this point. Um, it's
So
it,
it's a resource-based crypto that is actually using up resources,
correct.
aka power. Okay, so it's basically just shooting yourself in the foot. That would be a lot faster, by the way. Just poof.
There was a
What
go ahead.
oh, sorry, you said $10. Out of what price of Bitcoin? Because I wanted to find what percentage.
I don't know. I tried to move some Ethereum like a few days ago. It was a little bit more than it was around $10 for the miners fee. So I can only imagine that Bitcoin's gonna be much more than that. So
You weren't moving a whole coin or whatever. Like
no,
it's a percentage of. Oh, I see.
no,
So
no.
that charge happens whether you're moving fractional or full, right?
That's a minor. I believe in Ethereum. You can pay a little more to go a little faster. I think they call it gas.
Wow.
But yeah,
So so if you're transferring $100, that's 10%. If you're transferring 1,000, that's 1%. That's still, yeah, that's a lot.
it's not
You know.
it's not whether you're moving $5 or $100,000, it's going to be the same.
So then who makes that money? The miners get that.
Miners.
So then that's like a built-in inflation.
But
That
it's
like
more
our
complicated. It's more complicated than that because a lot of people are not mining independently, and they go through what are known as miner pools, and the transaction goes through whoever can whoever can process this transaction the fastest gets the miner fee, and it's kind of like a game of musical chairs. So you have an advantage when you're working with miner pools, but there's also a disadvantage. I mean, if you have a really powerful computer, just do it yourself. Don't do a miner pool. If you want to play a game of lottery, just go through a miner pool.
Yeah,
it
but
just
at the end
reminds
of the
me.
day, we're talking about power. We're talking about electricity, and
Yeah.
that doesn't go into the, you know, pockets of the miner. It goes into some companies' pockets. And
Yeah.
if we own, you know, theoretically we own that power ourselves, we wouldn't be paying more and more for it. Like the question is the actual use of resources, not the use of money per se, because money is, you know, fiat. It doesn't actually have a value.
Yeah, I agree. And what's funny is that the same thing happens in a normal economic system. Michael Hudson, he does really good. He's an economist. He said that the way our system works is that there are people who own the money, like the banks, and by merely owning money, they have rent. They call themselves rentiers, and the rent is the interest payments that they're getting from people who are using their money in fractions of a time. Like you're taking mini loans sometimes when you're doing a trade. That's kind of sounds like what you're telling me with the transaction fees. But the thing is,
It's
with
around
mining, like
$14 today. $14 to move Bitcoin. So
any amount, like 1 to whatever, 100 or whatever.
Yeah.
That's weird. That's very strange. But I mean, I guess because every fraction itself has to create another verification hash or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that does not sound sustainable. Because so what happens is that it's money being created out of thin air in that system, just like we have in our interest system. Like a bank holds $1 million and they lend out at like 5% interest, $500,000 to you. There's extra money that's being put in the system. Where does it come from?
There's only a finite amount of coins. The last coin will be minted in about 80 years from now. There's only, God, I think 50% are already in supply. A loss got lost in the early days of Bitcoin, so I believe a new coin is minted every 12 and a half minutes. Yeah. I think the last halvening happened in March.
No, you're right, Thor. They're using resources to come up with a currency that itself, the currency only has value because it's used by a lot of people. At least with like gold or silver, when they mine it, you actually have silver or gold or lithium or whatever. So it's almost like a new type of fiat currency, just like the one we have now, where it's printing money. Of course, printing money is not good, but it is going in the hands of someone.
Our currency should be power. It should be electricity.
Okay, so we have 2 minutes left.
Oh, you mean BTU? BTU.
If you use up electricity when you use up, credit, that would actually be resource based, and that has a finite limit. You can't use up more than you have in power. Just a thought.
Well, at some point, computing will become so much faster, and then they'll come out with a new, let's say, algorithm or whatever. I don't know. Like, will it ever become efficient? Who knows?
Well, what I'm talking about is like the value is in the kilowatt as such for how much you use. It doesn't matter what you do in computer land as such. That's abstract. And the more you can do on that kilowatt, essentially the more free stuff you got. But as long as you're using a kilowatt, you use something, So it's a resource-based idea.
Guys, we only have one left. Any last thoughts?
Make sure you spay and neuter all politicians.
Unite forces against the evil empire and join us.
I hereby declare this to be an unlawful assembly. I order all those assembled to immediately disperse.